Welcome to the channel, That Retired Guy. My name is Daryl and I am retired and I'm a guy. So it's probably no surprise that I'm making a video about how to build a bar. And of course, I would do that in my rec room. Now I've really enjoyed building things in my retirement over the years. You can only build so many birdhouses though with the grandkids, and after a while you start to wonder, what else can I do with my DIY skills? So the question is obvious, build a bar. Now, as they say in Texas or Alberta, it's not my first rodeo.
Yes, ma'am. Oh, yeah.
I've built many bars over the years, even starting before retirement. Now, it probably has a lot to do with the fact that I've moved so many times, and every time I move, I end up doing a lot of renovations. I gotta admit, I'm probably a DIY addict. But in this video, I'm going to describe the process, like from start to finish, of how to build a bar, the latest one that I built. Now, this bar could easily be added to anybody's rec room. It's a bar with a small footprint. It's got high entertainment value, and it's the kind of thing that would add a lot of dollars to the value of your home. Now, there are a lot of different kind of bars out there that you could build. I've built a very large full-function wet bars like this one, and it includes a fridge, freezer, wine fridge, draft beer dispenser, dishwasher, hardwood floors, got stone bar front on it, live edge bar tops. It's all the works. And this bar, it can easily seat like 8 people comfortably. I built this one just a few feet off an exterior wall to save space in this house. Even in this small footprint, I was able to fit in a kegerator and a wine fridge. The raised bar top was a slab of live edge, and the lower section was a butcher block. Here's another one that I built years ago at our cottage in Ontario at Sauble Beach. It also has a small footprint. It's kind of tucked away in a corner under the stairs. It was really a tight fit for 4 people, but you work with the space you have. It was full function with smaller versions of a beer fridge and a wine fridge, a keg fridge tucked away in the corner there. As you can see, it was nicely decorated with a lot of tacky bar tchotchkes, but that's just the way a bar should be. So for comparison, I also built an outdoor bar on the back deck of the cottage. It's very basic, takes advantage of the structural posts that are holding up the upper deck. This one had a bar fridge, a nice solid wood bar top. It seated 4 to 6 people. Don't forget to have good sturdy footrest. I installed an outdoor weather-related electrical switches and plugs. It's great for warming trays and margarita blenders. It was a great gathering place for those hot summer days. So now when it comes to building your own bar, you can see there's many ways to go. And what I'm going to show you is how to build a bar that you can tuck away into a wall. In this case, an 11-foot section of the wall, and I'm stealing only a couple of feet from the room behind it. You could build it out from the wall if you're using an exterior wall. For bar seating, I chose to use a large bar height live edge table that seats 8 people instead of, the traditional belly up bar as shown in earlier versions. This configuration best suits conversation, card games, board games, that kind of thing. If you're looking for the more traditional bar, you can always buy a standalone one and position it in front of the serving bar, the one that I'm going to show you how to build. So let's get building. All right, so it goes without saying, you're going to need to make some drawings of what you're planning to build. Now, my plan was to build in a beer fridge, one with an ice maker, a kegerator, a wine fridge, and a bar top over a storage cupboard. So what you need to do is make sure you get the measurements of the equipment that you're going to put in there, add that up, and be sure to leave some extra space in between for the divider walls if you're going to use those. In my case, I needed a section of wall that was 11 feet by 6 feet tall. Now mark it off using a level. A longer level or a chalk line might have been better, just to make sure it's square before you start to cut. Now if you want to avoid a lot of messy drywall dust and scrap, I recommend you mark off all the stud locations and use a little magnet like this to find out all the drywall screws. Once you located them, you can chip out the drywall mud that covers them and just unscrew them. I'm telling you, that's going to save a lot of mess, and if you're careful, you can save those drywall cuts to be used later. It's a lot less waste. Now, don't forget to cut the power to any switches and receptacles that are inside the drywall cut area. You'll need to remove the covers and pull out the receptacles to get the drywall off safely. Now, the plan for this bar is to have everything inset into the wall. You can see that the spare bedroom behind the wall is plenty big enough, and losing 2 or 3 feet is not going to make a big difference. I've taken a section off of the ceiling that will be above the bar. This gives me the access I need to frame up the new wall, and as you can see, I will need to move the cold air return and the heat register in the ceiling. So now you'll see in a minute that I was able to make dual use of the cold air return. You see, the kegerator that I bought needs to have good ventilation, so I'm going to use the air return to create some circulation behind the keg fridge. Now, when I was up in the ceiling, I was able to locate the water lines that supplied the upstairs bath. This is going to allow me to tie into the cold water line to feed the ice maker in that fridge. So more on that in a minute. With the ceiling open, it's a good opportunity to bring in the electrical lines that I'll need to service the bar fridge and the beer fridge. Fridges should always be on their own circuit. Thankfully, I've got lots of space in the panel, so there's no problem to add a few 15 amp breakers there. Okay, so it's time to take down the wall studs and get ready to frame in the new walls. This is where a good metal blade on a chop saw will save you a lot of aggravation. Now, I have to cut the bedroom carpet out where the wall is going up. The best way to do that is to simply lift up the carpet and fold it back for a time being. Wait until later to cut the carpet once the walls are up and the floor tiles are down and that sort of thing. That way there's no chance you're going to cut the thing too short. Okay, so once the new walls are framed in, it's time to replace the flooring. Now, the best option for flooring around a bar is either ceramic or porcelain tiles. Now, my plan is to run the tile under the bar and probably about 3 feet out. So pick up some tile. Now, make sure it's going to match with the rest of the colors in the room, and stock up on that mortar and your grout. Now, I've done a lot of DIY tiling in my day, and it's true that the more practice you have, the better you're going to be. Now, my son is in the construction trades, and he has given me a lot of good tips over the years. But if you want to try it, give it a try. There's lots of DIY videos out there that you can see that will give you some good ideas. Now, make sure you get the right kind of mortar for the application you're going to use and the right size trowel. Now, one of the greatest inventions for tiling was these leveling clips. They sure make your joints flush and evenly spaced. And what you see there, the white and yellow plastic tabs sticking out of the tiles, that's the leveling clips. Give them a try. Okay, now that the floors and framing are in place, we can start to install the electrical receptacles. Now, I recommend getting an electrician in to do this work. Over the years, I've done minor electrical work like installing light fixtures, ceiling fans, even extra receptacles and breakers. But I've also worked on larger electrical projects with my son Dan and my brother-in-law Gary when we did a full electrical installation on a large rec room build. It included even things like sub-panels. So now on these builds, we actually called in electrical inspectors to review and sign off on our work. And I got to tell you, there's nothing more satisfying than getting the official stamp of approval on your DIY work. Now, if you're thinking about doing some of your own electrical work, here's a few important tips. There are a lot of common mistakes the DIYers make. Let's go over a few of these. First of all, make sure that your junction boxes are accessible and not buried inside the wall or the ceiling. Seen that too many times. Now, don't overload junction boxes or receptacle boxes. Use the proper size marrettes for the number and the gauge of the wire that you're using. Don't add too many fixtures to a circuit. Be sure that the wire gauge, the 12-2 or 14-2, that make sure that it's matched to the breaker amperage and the appliance that you're going to be running on it. Leave 6 inches of wire at least inside the receptacle box. Make sure the hot and the neutral wires are not reversed. How many people do that? It's crazy. Hot goes to gold and neutral goes to silver. Now, always use cable clamps in the electrical boxes. Sometimes they just have those knockout pieces. You need to put clamps in there to hold the wires down. Only install ceiling fans on boxes that are designed to carry the weight. And always use GFCIs in wet areas. That is like within 6 feet of wherever there's a source of water. Now this bar project requires separate circuits for the fridges, and I also wanted to have switch lighting over the bar. So here you can see the boxes installed and the lines being run. All right, so let's talk about plumbing. As I mentioned earlier, I found the water lines from the upstairs bathroom directly above the bar. Since I plan to use an ice maker on the fridge, I'll need to tie into the cold water line there. Now I've got to tell you, I love the PEX plumbing. After all those years of soldering copper pipe, this stuff is a breeze. Hell, I almost burned a house down once trying to solder joints inside a wood frame wall using one of those propane torches. That was pretty scary. Anyway, no problems like that when you're working with PEX. Now here I'm cutting into the water line. Make sure you've got a bucket to catch the water. I'm installing a 1/2 inch T and attaching a length of tubing that's going to run down behind the fridge. I'm going to terminate that line with a 1/2 inch to 1/4 inch valve. As it turns out, my local Home Depot was out of the PEX version, so I opted for a shark bite valve. It's always amazed me how these push-on fittings don't leak. I don't know how they do it. Well, we'll probably never know. It's like the caramel bar secret. Anyway, be sure to use those PEX clamps to secure the lines to the studs and prevent the pipes from banging. Okay, so now we're on to the HVAC part of the job. Okay, remember earlier when I mentioned that I want to provide the ventilation behind the kegerator? Well, to do that, I'm going to tie into the existing cold air return. Now, I don't know if you can see it, but the cold air return terminates at the top of that section of the wall. I removed the flow diverter and attached a 6-inch diameter extension that gets me over to the wall behind the kegerator. Now, once there, I reattached the diverter to draw the cold air up through the wall behind the kegerator. I also put an air return grate on the bedroom wall behind the kegerator. Now it's serving a dual purpose. The HVAC work is very forgiving. All you need is some silver tape, some self-taping screws, and Bob's your uncle. Be careful though if you start to add more lines, hot and cold air returns, because you can throw off the whole system. You can throw it all out of balance. Just moving this one cold air return a few feet down the wall, that's not going to make much of a difference. Now what you're seeing here is me adding sound insulation to the walls around the fridges. The constant noise from the compressors would be annoying for anyone trying to sleep in the spare bedroom. Okay, now that all the utilities are roughed in, it's time to start closing up the walls. Remember that drywall I managed to save? Now it's time to reinstall it. Here it is up on the wall in the spare bedroom. I've also purchased a 30-inch base cabinet from Home Depot and a couple of refrigerator panels that I'm using to separate the bar from the fridges on either side. Once those are secured top and bottom, I can finish putting up the rest of the drywall. Now, doing drywall is no fun. I can tell you how many times I've sworn that I'll never do drywall again. It's really messy and requires a lot of patience, especially if you're not an expert. Now, I've watched the pros hang the board and slap on the mud like they're doing it in their sleep. 1, 2, 3 coats with a light sand and they're done. With me, it's too much mud, sand it down. Now the paper shows through, so it's back to more mud. And instead of lather, rinse, repeat, it's mud, sand, repeat until the pail's empty. Now, putting up small pieces of board like this on the ceiling, it's no big deal. In some of my earlier projects, I had to put up full sheets on a ceiling. Now, that's tough slugging. The trick there is to rent or buy one of those drywall lifts. That saves a lot of aggravation. Now, when it comes to finishing the edges and the corners, I prefer the metal edging. It will take a beating in case those appliances and furniture bump into it. And get a couple of those corner trowels. Inside corners are like nearly impossible to do without them. One of the things I've learned over the years is to use wide trowels. This lets you apply a good coat of mud and still feather it into the wall surface. Now, it goes without saying that the worst part of drywalling is the sanding. Dust is everywhere. Every DIYer knows that this is the #1 complaint of your spouse. Preserve a little marital bliss there. Seal your workspace with some plastic sheeting. Now, what I'm doing here is some final coat sanding. Get yourself a bright light and some reading glasses if you need them. That way you can see the ridges and scratches that you're trying to take out before you move on to painting. Now when it comes to painting new drywall, you have to make sure it's properly sealed. A good drywall primer is the first step. The top coat paint should be a premium brand to get good coverage, but even with the best paint, you're still going to want to do at least 2 coats. Sometimes you can match the color of the primer to your paint, and that helps too. Now, cutting in is a real skill. It comes with patience and a steady hand. The best advice I got on cutting in was to stay about 1/8 of an inch away from the ceiling in a nice straight line. That way you avoid blotches on the ceiling. Thanks, Glenita. One other thing, don't cheap out on the brushes or the rollers. Get a good cutting in brush with some premium rollers. It'll pay off. All right, now it's the final stage of the project, and it's time to assemble the bar. First thing I want to do is put a couple of pot lights above the bar, and I did leave a wire up in the ceiling just for that purpose. Now when it comes to installing the bar top, I chose a solid maple butcher block countertop, and I'm going to tuck it nicely into that little space that I left there, and looks great. I've moved the fridges in and I tested them out. Everything seems to work fine. The ice maker's filling up. The last thing I need to do is install the kegerator. Now I've drilled a hole in the bar top directly above the exit hole of the kegerator, and I'm adding a piece of water pipe insulated to bridge the gap between the kegerator and the bar top. You don't want the beer to get warm as it travels to the top. Well, unless you're British and you like warm beer. Anyway, that red line that's coming into the keg fridge, that's the CO2 line. When you buy a kegerator, it usually comes with all the fittings and the small CO2 tank. I've mounted that tank in the cupboard right next to it for easy access. All right, well that's the serving bar complete. The only thing left to do is provide some seating at the bar. And as I said earlier, I wanted seating where I could gather a group of friends and family around a bar table. With a more traditional belly-up type bars, as I call them, you can only really have conversation with this person sitting right next to you. A serving bar and a bar table is a much better option in my view. So I found this great live edge tabletop online. It's a solid acacia wood, 36-inch wide by 70 inches long, perfect size. I got this from Rona for a decent price. Now, for my American friends, Lowe's bought Rona back in 2016, and if you're interested, it's got pretty much the same products. And for my Canadian friends, don't worry, Rona restructured in 2023, and it's once again a Canadian company. All's well in the international DIY retail space. Anyway, back to the bar table. So I bought some table legs from Amazon, good sturdy ones, because, you know, people do lean on the bar tables after they've had a few. I bolt those onto the tabletop and I add a set of leather bar stools, and you've got a great entertainment area. To finish off the bar, I put up some shelving with wine glasses and lots of beer steins, and of course some neon beer signs. Now that's what makes a bar. So there you go, how to build a bar from start to finish. Now if you're still watching, you're likely a real DIYer, and or you fell asleep partway through the video. It's time to wake up now before the channel. It's going to automatically probably go over to Mike Holmes' rerun or something like that. So to all my fellow DIYers and those in the bar builder community, may your bars be sturdy and sound, may they always be well stocked, and may family and friends always find your bar the place to gather. And of course, until next time we meet, be sure to live your best life.